Welcome to our open book. Mary Glazer, Mr. Dickens, Darlene, Karen Smith, Aunt Francette, Diana Wood, Dorothy Joy, Mary Frances, Josette King, Travels, Kathy Stump, Elvin Helfcott. Good to see you, Elvin. Mary Glazer. Already said Mary Glazer. But I can always say it twice. Monica Baraldi Borgida, also Elise, SR. Very good to be with everybody. I wanted to laugh when I got home today from our show, which I find.
You had a wonderful show today.
Yeah.
In
Very
fact, I think Marianne wrote to you a very nice note.
Oh, all right. Tom Merce, Mr. Dickens. So I picked up Calvin Trillin. It's one of the funniest writers ever. And I turned, Caroline will tell you, well, there's a trait in here that I share with Johnny Apple that you will notice, not much, but I'm always thinking about dinner.
You are.
And, in any event,
I see the look in Scott's eye when he's about to ask me the question. Say, what's for dinner?
Question on which the future of civilization hangs. In any event, R.W. Johnny Apple, he was Washington Bureau Chief National Political Correspondent, legendary figure at the New York Times, and was known for his gastronomique.
For his ample appetite.
Ample appetite, but he wrote about it. So let me, in a profile of Johnny Apple, this is what Calvin Trillin in this section wrote. In discussions of Apple mellowing, nobody goes much for my theory that Johnny Apple was saved by gluttony. I'm still attracted by the notion, though, that his outsized supply of energy and drive and competitiveness was drained off at a table in the savoring of a decent burgundy or the perfect crab cake. I was present when he found what he described in the Times as his nominee for the single best crab dish in Baltimore, if not the Western Hemisphere, the jumbo lump crab cake at Fadley Seafood in the Lexington Market. And I can testify that his look of triumph did give him some resemblance to a very big 4-year-old. Some of the people who don't go for my theory say that Apple was a glutton to start with. And some, of course, believe that he has not yet been saved. I developed the theory in the mid-70s when Apple arrived in London as bureau chief. This would be for the Times. At the time, I mentioned one piece of evidence in a book giving Apple the nom de table,
yes.
Nom de table of Charlie Plum, as I have done in print now and then. Quote, in an effort to find the perfect dining spot, he had eaten in 60 French restaurants in London within a few months. When Plum's friends are asked to name his principal charms, they often mention relentlessness. Even before that, Apple had a serious interest in good meals and good wine. When he was in the Washington Bureau in the early 70s, before he went to London, colleagues found that a casual let's get a bite of lunch could mean going across the street to what was then one of the fanciest French restaurants in town and having a 3-course meal with appropriate wine. Given the fact that most reporters think a bite of lunch has something to do with the BLT, Apple's food and wine standards became an obvious target for pranks. Sending a bottle of Lancer's Rosé. Do you know that wine?
No.
Lancer's Rosé is kind of a drugstore wine.
Oh.
Sending a bottle of Lancer's.
I've heard of rosé.
Right, yeah. I like rosé, as you know.
Yeah, I like rosé too.
It's like a sparkling rosé. It's like
sounds lovely.
Yeah, I think it is, but it's like, first drink when you turn 21. Sending a bottle of Lancer's Rosé over to the table during a political convention in Kansas City. Phoning him in the guise of a fawning reader to ask his advice on a proper wine for wild as opposed to domestic goose. Concocting a scheme in Iran to refill bottles Apple had obtained from the Shah's cellar with local plunk. The pranks had no effect at all on Apple's dining habits. At some point during his long stint in London, he began putting his eating adventures into print, taking advantage of the fact that, as he puts it, Americans, or at least New York Times readers, care about a broader spectrum of British life than they do about French or German or Japanese life. Is that true, Calvin? Oh, well. He is not the sort of food writer who makes reservations in the name of narrow wolf characters or slips in quietly disguised as the Korean General Counsel. In restaurants or anywhere else, Apple seems more comfortable once the people he's dealing with are aware of his rank and station. The simplest description I've heard of his customary reception at a restaurant is, everybody falls to the ground when Johnny walks in. The Apple at table stories that don't involve his 3-lunch capacity do involve his standards. When his dining companion at the Kansas City restaurant, B. Drummond Ayers, then also of the Times, refused to let him send the bottle of Lancers away, after a long day talking to politicians and a long wait for service, Ayers was ready to start in on any tipple available, Apple hid it under the table. On a presidential visit that Bill Clinton made to Africa, Apple had dinner one night in Kampala, Uganda, whose restaurant possibilities he had, of course, researched in some depth before leaving Washington. I remember this is before you could do that online. Quote, "We got to go to what Johnny has found out is the best Indian restaurant in the country." This is in Uganda. Maureen Dowd, who was in Apple's party that evening, told me, "We're the only ones in the restaurant. That would worry some people. But Johnny knows it's the right place just because he's there." After tucking in his napkin, she went on, Apple said in stentorian tones that seemed to be addressed to no one in particular, "No prawns at this altitude." That remains a phrase that Apple watchers occasionally use to greet each other. No prawns at this altitude. Oscar Wilde said that a man who would command a London dinner table can rule the world. I was told not long ago by the legal philosopher Ronald Dworkin, who became friendly with Apple when the Apples lived in London, and Johnny always commanded the dinner table. Dworkin was one of 8 people gathered for Apple's 58th birthday luncheon, held at Gidley Park in Devon is the street in Chicago, a Devon country inn and restaurant that had been celebrated by Apple in the Times and eventually won what was apparently the first Michelin star ever awarded to an establishment run by an American. Parenthetical, as a Midwesterner, albeit a Midwesterner with made-to-order English shirts, well, that I understand. Apple is particularly proud that Paul and Kay Anderson, who run the place, both graduated from Purdue. In a private dining room, the celebrants, including the Hendersons, consumed beluga caviar.
Beluga?
Beluga. Did I say beluga? Yeah, I did. Beluga.
I think it's beluga, yes.
Okay. Beluga caviar, sautéed foie gras with quince sauce, salad of red mullet and lettuce with olive oil and coriander dressing, tagliatelle with white truffles, partridge mousse with morels and spinach, roasted saddle of hare, Munster and single Gloucester cheeses.
This is a lot like what we're having for dinner tonight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course, right?
Maybe the mushrooms.
Right. Yeah, thank you. More mushrooms. Roasted, I have a mango and eau de vie de porc sorbet.
Yes. Eau de vie, it's an alcohol. What is it with it that you make with fruit?
De poire,
De poire, made with pear.
Oh, sorbets.
It's kind of known. The Williams is one of the brands.
Oh.
And in fact, some of them, it's really quite lovely. There's a tradition in France. Oh, can I go get it? This is so beautiful. You read, I'll go get it.
Yeah. Okay. Du poire sorbet is Gâteau Marjolaine coffee and 6 wines, all from 1934, the year of Apple's birth. Now this is the part that reminded me of me. Well, in a funny way, not quite as classy, obviously. Around 5 or 5:30, I was as close to death by eating as I have ever been, Dworkin told me. You listen to this and see if it reminds you in a small way of something I would say. We were about to break up and go up to the bedroom and have a nap. Then Apple was saying, "We have to have a talk about dinner." Just a quick word. We've eaten rather well, so something simple. I have an idea. The truffles that came with the tagliatelle came boxed in rice. You could make us a risotto out of the rice the truffles came in. Let's have a Saint Julien, a late growth Saint Julien. A 79 would be all right. The part that might remind you of me is, let's talk about dinner.
Oh, no, you don't have to explain.
Okay. Oh, no, not the tagliatelle.
No, or the wine.
Much of this eating and travel is, of course, underwritten by the New York Times. When it comes to what Homer Bigart used to call feeding at the Sulzberger Trough, it is widely acknowledged that R.W. Apple is without peer. Joe Lelyveld, who even as executive editor was not known for demanding a prime position at the Trough, once stopped in London when he was the foreign editor and took his bureau chief to dinner. A lavish dinner, as it turned out, since his bureau chief was, after all, R.W. Apple Jr. When the check arrived, Apple reached over to scoop it up. "You better let me take this," he said. "They would never believe it coming from you." I once suggested to Apple that he bequeath his expense accounts to the Smithsonian Institution. But the Times has them, he said. I turned them in. He sounded a bit regretful. It seemed to me that he was not able to give posterity an opportunity to inspect some of his more stunning creations. At the Times, the various departments have what is called a cost center, what amounts to a budget line. The foreign desk has a cost center. The cost center. The editorial board has a cost center. R.W. Apple Jr. has a cost center. Quote, "It's been my fate and privilege over the years to sit next to various people who were approving Apple's expense accounts." Al Siegel says they were hoots. And once in a while, you'd look up and the person, those were various assistant managing editors, was shaking his head and reading off wine from my cellars. Siegel, who was a great admirer of R.W. Apple Jr., thinks that all in all, the Times has received good value. Asked about having his own cost center, Apple is suddenly overcome with modesty. "It's because I write for all these different parts of the paper," he told me. Not long ago, Apple was appointed an associate editor of the Times, a position that is something of an honorific, and some acquaintances asked what the difference the new position would make, since he already seemed to do whatever he wanted to do. Before being named associate editor, Apple said there were 2 hotels in which he could not stay on his expense account. Now, as he interprets company policy, he can. So Calvin Trillin writing about the, this, he never became editor of the Paris Herald Tribune. What was I going to say? So I'm trying to remember the name of the man years ago who approved NPR expense accounts. And we were in El Salvador, forgive me, I'm sure I've told you this story before. And we profiled Rosa's Bordello in San Salvador. And it was interesting because both members of the military, people in the military, the government, and for that matter, rebel forces went to this bordello. So we interviewed some of the people who worked at the bordello, and they said, understandably, from their point of view, you're taking up our time, you have to pay for it. So I forget what we paid for in American currency, and Leo Delacqua and Andrea were trying to think, how are we going to... And then I figured, well, that's still on the truth, and we put, whatever, it was like $200 bordello services. Went right through.
That's funny.
Went right. I remember the man who approved it. He called me up and said, "Scott, I love this." So, yes, darling.
Will you show this?
Yes.
So this is a beautiful bottle. It's a tradition, I think now there are fewer and fewer of them, but they put the bottle on the branches of the tree when the fruit is very, very
Is
small.
that how they do it?
Yes, and so the tree, all the
Shack.
branches are hanging down. But this, first of all, I think it's so beautiful. And so what I do is you can buy the Poire Williams, just the bottle without the pear inside. And so I top it off whenever it gets too low because it could last like this forever. It's just lovely. You can turn it around. It's a whole pear inside this beautiful bottle.
Wow.
Isn't that charming?
That is.
And you can also, I think they do it with apples as well. Would you like to know what's for dinner?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we go to the farmer's market every week, and as in many farmers markets, there's someone who sells mushrooms. And so I get about 1.5 pounds of a little bit of everything. I get shiitake and cremini and um, what's the other big one? I get the gold oyster.
The gold oyster is really.
And then I get one more, which I'm forgetting at the moment, but I get an assembly. And then I make a risotto. And if you make risotto for a long time, I made it in a traditional, pot, le creuset pot. But now I do it in the pressure cooker. And so you just saute your mushrooms for a little bit. Then I put 2 cups of arborio rice or cannelloni rice. I put a little bit of olive oil. I saute all of that just for a couple minutes, a little bit of white wine. And then I put about 5 cups of water. I close it and I pressure cook it for 6 minutes. And then I release, and it is just wonderful.
Really, it's fun.
And then meanwhile, if I have too many mushrooms, because 1.5 pounds is quite a bit, I take some and I just cut them. I put a little olive oil and I put them to roast before I'm doing this. So they roast in the oven. I have that little counter oven. And so when the risotto is done, I put all the roasted mushrooms on top. It's so easy. I mean, dinner is ready in 15 minutes, sometimes a little longer because it takes a while for the pressure to come up, but it's just wonderful. Are you okay?
Yeah. Do I have something there?
No, you're salivating already.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah. And look, we don't have that every night, but it is a typical dinner. That's what Caroline does. Yeah, she should do an open bowl. So.
Well, it's so easy when you use the pressure cooker. Anyway, I highly recommend it. And now with the markets, spring things are starting. Maybe there will be spring garlic. Oh, that's the other thing. Before with my mushrooms, I'll put either shallots or I'll saute onions. I'll put a lot of garlic before I put in my risotto. And the other thing you can do.
More open bowl.
The other thing, this is Paulina's favorite. She doesn't like the mushrooms very much, but she likes when I make the risotto with a real, I make the chicken broth, which I also do in the pressure cooker. But often when I make the risotto with the mushrooms, I don't use chicken broth. I just use water. It's actually lovely. And then at the end, when it's done, I put lots of Parmesan cheese and salt, pepper. Oh, can we talk about our new favorite thing?
Yes, please. You explain that. Yeah.
Well, we brought this back from France. It turns out we were in a little restaurant in Normandy, and they were putting this sel fou on everything. It's apparently from Ile de Ré and also a little bit in Brittany. And it's, I think there might not be enough light. It's sel de Guérande, which is, that wonderful salt from Brittany. Paprika,
put this up for Mr. Dickens,
thyme, pepper, pink pepper, cumin, coriander. Anyway, it's a little bit of everything. Celery, sesame, and it goes on everything. It's called crazy salt. If you ever see it anywhere.
We kept going back to this restaurant, which is actually behind a fish market. And they kept pouring this on everything. And I kept going, God, I can't believe how good this is.
I kept having to tell Scott that in France, you can't do that.
I know.
You have to be quiet and act like you've eaten this before.
Yeah, that's right. But you got the idea. I would really like that, and they didn't sell it right there.
No, it's really a regional thing. But I was able to get some. It's lovely. If you ever see it, it's called sel fou, which is crazy salt.
Well, thanks very much for being with us on our open book tonight. Open appetites, open bowl. Thanks for tomorrow night. We will have Gin Phillips the great novelist, will be joining us. I think she's on book tour, but she's going to join us from Concord, Massachusetts, and we'll talk about her novel, Ruby Falls. So thanks very much for being with us. I'm a little hungry now. I can't.
Perfect.
Yeah. All right. Thanks very much. Take care. See you later.